Welcome to the NBA Team Podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Andrew Riche. I am joined by Adam Murray. Adam, this was a first round that definitely had a lot more surprises. I felt like it sort of had the whole spectrum of what could happen in any of these playoff series. We saw high seeds in trouble and get out of it. We saw higher seeds lose. We saw some clutch moments. I wish we had a few more clutch moments in some of these playoff games than we did. We saw very, very low scoring in some of these quarters when defenses picked up. All in all, one of the wilder, less predictable first rounds, I think, in recent memory.
Well, it was quite predictable. Everyone got it wrong. Well,
Yeah.
basically what I learned two things from this. Number one, I didn't even watch any of these game sevens, or as I was up in Canada, and there were zero references to any basketball up there, up in Montreal. And
Well, I mean, they're talking about the hockey, you know.
of course, it was all hockey. It was all the Canadians game six hosting. And then Saturday night was, I believe, Carolina, Philly game one, and zero even trying to catch
And
anything
they're in
from
the
the
World
Celtics.
Cup. And they're in the World Cup this summer, right? So that's kind of
Yes,
something
well,
they're
because they're
focused on
hosting.
too.
Yes, international Andy getting his soccer on. But anything. I'm just going back to basketball. The things I learned were the East is just trash, and each
The East,
team.
I was telling my friend this because we're both wrestling fans. We were saying like the Eastern Conference felt like this mid-card spot fest where like just the wildest things happen. There were twists and turns put in there just to keep things interesting, to keep the fan interested. And then you get to the West, and yes, there was an upset in the West. We'll talk about them, but they were influenced by injuries though. But we kind of got what we expected in the West. Like you have these two heavyweights.
Well, that's what it was.
Literally is a heavyweight.
It was like when you'd hear Goldberg's music in WCW, and then he's going to win in 75 seconds, and then go
Yeah,
back.
they
It's like,
had. I
yeah,
mean,
you
I
destroyed
don't want to
him.
jump it. I don't want to jump immediately to Spurs Blazers. I'm just saying this as an example. Like the only game that they lost was the one where he messed up his jaw and got a concussion. Talking about Victor Wembanyama. The other games he plays, they absolutely like wiped the Blazers off the court. Thunder looked dominant. Like they had teams that looked dominant, and then you had teams that were one seeds, like the Pistons, and they were hanging on for dear life. So like there were some. The East was just a really, really volatile, dramatic at times
Dumpster fire.
yeah, you could call it a dumpster fire, but the first round had its share of drama. Like I said earlier at the open, I just wish the games were better. Even when the games were close, the RJ Barrett crazy shot that bounced way up Don Nelson style and dropped right in. I just wish games were like that, were tighter, and then like we saw these comebacks where like teams were like up big and they just blow it. And
That
it's
was the one funny thing being in Canada.
I saw it
That
multiple times in this playoffs.
that no, that Instagram reel was just everywhere on my
Mhm.
feed, just all because I'm just back to geolocated in Canada, and just boom, there it is. All that's the only basketball highlight they gave me. But
Mhm.
anywho, we are now on to round two. We have jettisoned the weaker teams in the West. Kind of. Should we just start with the disappointing one, or the
I want to start with the Oklahoma City Thunder. They just completely ravaged the Suns. The Suns, I felt like the Suns did enough work to get through the play-in anyways. I don't think beating the Golden State Warriors was like the most impressive thing in the world, but they lost at home to Portland in a close one, and then they had to come back and win the second one, and they did it. And they did they did their business, but then once you found out, Mark Williams was not healthy, Grayson Allen wasn't healthy, even though he came back for this series, you knew they probably didn't have a chance. Jalen Williams for the Thunder actually hurt his hamstring again, and it wasn't even like consequential, like because Shai Gilgeous-Alexander just dominated the Sun series. He had a game where he scored 42 points. He probably could have scored 60 if he wanted, because he went 15 for 18 from the field.
yeah, but now Now that it's time to move on to tougher competition,
Well,
kinda.
you think so, so I mean, I hate to do my Adam Murray impression of like, how is this not a sweep? But the thing about the LA Lakers, who's the next matchup, they were clearly like beset by injuries as well. When they went into their series against the Houston Rockets, they were the higher seed. That's something that's easy to forget. People are like, oh well,
Yeah, but
Houston.
4 or 5 is like whatever. But
Well, yeah, but there was a lot of smart money going in. Oh, Houston's going to dominate them. Luka's not ready. Austin Reeves isn't 100%. Like
yeah, and
LeBron's
then
going to
Kevin
run out of
Durant doesn't play, and
gas,
that's the
and then
game.
yeah. So there's been a lot of speculation, and deservedly so. And I think I'll be very fair. I don't want to turn this into like a NBA gossip podcast, but because we have a lot of time for that in the summer. But I thought that the things that Kevin Durant did, in terms of the way he handled the post ankle injury, like whether or not he was rehabbing, whether or not talking to the media, not being there on the bench for some of the games, it was just so irresponsible. And I think that some of it had to do with the fact that yes, there was a lot of disagreement between him and his younger teammates with that, the leaked chats about him like throwing shade at him. And there was clearly all I'm trying to say is that there was clearly a disconnect there, and I don't think Durant, as the leader of the team and the Hall of Fame veteran, I don't think he handled himself well at all. He's almost at a point where I feel like he's hurting his legacy. He's getting to a point like Carmelo Anthony did, where teams might not even want you if you're that big of a headache. Now, he's
No,
the
it's
greatest
he's
player
not a
of all
leader.
time that is a headache. He is a headache, but he's like the greatest headache of all time.
He's
You know
a
what I'm
headache, but
saying?
he's a hired gun. The same way Harden is. Like, neither of those two are going to lead. They're just going to come in, play, dominate, and then go home. But anywho, Houston is out. LA is in.
Yeah, but well,
To
all
quote,
I'm going to say is that the injury was probably legit. We just didn't get the full story. There was word that supposedly him and Amon Thompson bumped knees, and he had a bone bruise on his knee. But I just wish there was more clarification of like, oh, how serious is his injury? But we're on all these teams, they err on the side of caution, so they didn't play. Şengün was up and down. Reed Shepherd looked terrible, absolutely terrible. And Thompson looked okay, but he can't make an outside shot. The Lakers just played smart. They actually played smart basketball. JJ Redick actually did some good adjustments. Marcus Smart came out of the doldrums and played really well for them. So they moved on. They're going to play the Thunder. Clearly, just from the outset, any team that's playing the Thunder is undermanned. The Lakers are going to be seriously undermanned. I think Luka might try to come back, but my guess is no, because I think that the Lakers are going to go down 3-0. That's the issue there. If you're down 3-0, is Luka going to be motivated to want to come back that early?
all
That
right, that answers my question of
Well,
how
no,
won't
there's
this
more
go
to it
four
than that.
five?
There's more to it than that. I mean, this is very likely LeBron's last. This could be LeBron's last run with the Lakers. So if he gets eliminated, he might be moving on elsewhere. So there's going to be that drama there, for the networks. And is Jalen Williams going to come back to play? I would say he's probably going to come back. And can DeAndre Ayton dominate against Chet Holmgren? Because Holmgren's look great against the Suns, but Ayton, that's probably the best I've seen him look in a while against the Rockets.
All right. So again, how is this not going 5?
Well, I think that's about as far as it'll go, because I think the Thunder are just mentally prepared and their defense is more than ready. The one thing that might come back to get them, and they might actually lose one, is that the Lakers are one of the best teams in the league at getting the free throw line, especially when they have Reeves and Luka healthy. Reeves is playing, and the Thunder foul a lot. Everybody knows this. And I can see a game where the free throw disparity between at home at crypto, where the Lakers get like double the free throw attempts that the Thunder get. So I can see that scenario playing out. I also see very choppy games that like are like they might not hit 100.
All right, fair enough. Moving on to the next uh blowout, shall we say? Well, this injuries have caused this to be a well. Minnesota will be physical. Minnesota, San Antonio,
So
but
you're talking about the Minnesota Timberwolves versus the San Antonio
having
Spurs.
your only scorer out and having no other scorer on your team doesn't
I
bode
don't
well for
know.
you.
Jaden McDaniels just scored 30 points in a closeout game. I don't know if they don't have any scorers. I don't think that's accurate. Nate Anthony Edwards is hurt. I mean, everybody was scared that the injury was worse than that. You know, the other thing too is early in the or in game 4 of the Denver series, the same game where Edwards got hurt. DiVincenzo messed up his Achilles. And I mean, you could tell immediately because he did the same thing that happened with Tyrese Halliburton, the same thing that happened with Jason Tatum. The moment you saw it, you knew, oh, he just blew his Achilles. So no DiVincenzo for the rest of the season for Minnesota, probably for the next season. But we could talk about that when we get there. Edwards, he had a knee injury, trying to run back, and it I can see a scenario where the Wolves and their defense, because their defense is what got them through against the Denver Nuggets, in my opinion. The Denver Nuggets defense was terrible, and the offense for the Minnesota dude, I think any offense was going to be able to do whatever they wanted to the Denver Nuggets. The thing is, Minnesota's defense was able to really frustrate Nikola Jokic sometimes, put Jamal Murray in the blender a couple of times. The Spurs are young. They dominated the Blazers. The Blazers were not ready for prime time. Everybody knew that they weren't. I think that it's good that the Blazers got that experience in the playoffs, but I was not surprised that the Spurs just completely destroyed them the way that they did. The Spurs defense, here's the thing. I think the Wolves defense is actually better than the Spurs defense. So I want to see which team is able to get off the ground running faster on offense. I mean, do you see a scenario where Dasumu and a couple of those Nasri, a couple of those guys can give them problems and they can stretch them out a little bit?
No, I just see without Edwards, there goes your 30 to 40 point game per person.
Well, he'll
And
be back. I can guarantee you Edwards will come back. He'll probably be back for game 3 for the first Minnesota game.
yeah,
I
but
don't
by
think they're
then,
going
if
to
it's
punt.
already,
I don't think they're going to punt on the San Antonio games. I think they're really going to try their best to try to steal one, because that's been their magic. No pun intended. That's been their magic potion in the playoff runs that they've had, is that they've stolen one from the outset in the first 2 games when they're the road dogs. So I wonder if they're going to try to do it again to San Antonio without Edwards. I mean, Jaden McDaniels is playing amazing. Dasumu, where did he come from? I think he just earned himself a lot of money in this playoff run. And I mean, they have a little bit of depth, but the Spurs have a lot of depth too. That was the reason why the Spurs won game 3 against Portland. They didn't have Wembanyama, but Dylan Harper played well, Luke Cornett played well, De'Aaron Fox played they had depth to make up for the loss of Wembanyama. Now, to beat the Wolves, they need everybody. They need Wembanyama. If Wembanyama gets hurt again, the Wolves might actually take him out. But that's an injury scenario. How many games you see here?
5, 6.
I see 6 because I see Minnesota taking one in San Antonio. I can see the Spurs need a bit of a push. They need something where they get a challenge before they play, because I think they're ultimately going to play Oklahoma City. They need something that's going to challenge them. And I think that the Minnesota Timberwolves are a perfect example of that. I was really disappointed in Denver. I think a lot of people were, but maybe we're just overrating Denver because people are so in love with Jokic and the fact that his offensive beauty, it just hides so much of the problems that Denver has. I think we're coming to that realization.
Yeah,
Their defense was just so god awful. And Jamal
they were
Murray
just
was all
spent.
NBA. He was all NBA in the regular season. I'll give Jamal Murray credit there. But in the playoff run, he in the series, he looked bad. He did not show up when he had to show up. To the point that they had to get good play out of Spencer Jones, and Christian Braun was terrible too.
Speaking of terrible, now we can go to the East where nobody really made
Well,
a case for.
I mean, are you talking about terrible in terms of an Eastern Conference champion that's capable in the finals? Is that what you mean?
Yes.
I don't agree because I think that sometimes those Eastern Conference champions, they prove their mettle and then it just comes down to one matchup because you don't have to play the whole Western Conference. You just got to play one team. Um,
But if
so it,
nobody looked good in the first round, I don't expect all of a sudden
New York looked amazing in the back half of their series. I mean, that what they did to the Atlanta Hawks was unreal. I mean, that's I mean, and I'm not just talking about the game 6 where they like set records. They had like 83 points in the first half. They had a 47-point halftime lead. They were up 62 at one point in the third quarter, which in a playoff game is unthinkable. But they also looked great in the game 4, which for them was must win because they were down 2-1 to Atlanta and they just absolutely wiped the floor with Atlanta. So I don't agree with that because I felt like the Knicks were pretty impressive. And the Sixer comeback was impressive and the Detroit comeback was impressive too. So,
all right. So then New York is firing on all cylinders. How will Philly stop them?
the same way that they did it with the Celtics is that they're just going to have to go double big. I know that that's something that they had some trouble with, but once Joel Embiid got inserted into the Boston series, that's when it turned around for them.
Well, the
Uh,
Celtics didn't have two big men. The New York does. That
well,
doesn't.
yeah, well the Celtics had Neemias Queta. So they and then after that they didn't really have much. Also, they had some trouble mismatch wise with Derek, like cross matching wise, like Derek White. He would always wind up having to guard Maxey, and Maxey would eat him alive. And George got off. Paul George, he got off a couple of times, and there was just some matchup scenarios that Nick Nurse threw at Missoula that I don't think Missoula saw coming. And once Tatum hurt his knee and they aired on the side of caution. And to be fair, I wasn't upset about it. I was upset. I think a lot of degenerates were upset that they waited until within the last hour of tip off to announce it because they were trying to hold off as long as possible. And the league was probably telling the Celtics, hey, we need the status of Tatum right now. You need to tell us. And then they said, okay, we scratched him. He's out. And once people found out he was out, I think it became the reality started to set in. Oh, like the Sixers might actually come back, make the 3-1 comeback and win the series. If Tatum plays, the Celtics probably win the game, but
Well,
that's not the
they
world we
didn't,
live
and
in.
now we're talking about how Philly's going to stop New York from moving on.
Um, well, they can stop them because the thing is though, you got Maxey and you got George and you got Grimes who's playing well. Grimes can offset a little bit, and Oubre, you can try to have Oubre cover Brunson sometimes. You don't want Brunson to guard Maxey because he's just going to be so winded. You don't want to have to put him in the blender with all those ball screens that Maxey gets where he just squirts through for layups and jump shots. So I wonder if they're going to do a lot of if the Knicks are going to do a lot of switching where they don't want Brunson to get stuck being hunted by Maxey, and they just basically put Bridges on Maxey. So there's some defensive matchups, but because it's a too big lineup that New York likes to throw with Mitchell, and we all know the history behind Mitchell Robinson and Joel Embiid. Basically, like Joel Embiid basically took out Mitchell Robinson 2 years ago in the playoffs, and Joel Embiid and Karl Towns are not fond of each other either. So there might be some bad blood. Embiid is weird. He's a guy who seems like he's like a stumbling, bumbling robot, but he's still got that laser that can just like shoot your eyes out. So like you got to watch out with Embiid because if you don't play well against him, he could eat you alive the way he did to the Celtics. So I, it really depends on Towns and how aggressive he is. Because I know they're going to try to throw Mitchell Robinson at Embiid, but Embiid's smarter than that. He's going to try to find ways to get around that and force Towns to guard him. The problem I have with Philly is that if Paul George looks like a fossil against OG Anunoby, who has been on fire the whole playoffs, how are they going to compete with that? All you can do is hope that Mikal Bridges just stinks it up again and shoots a goose egg. And I think we've kind of gotten past that point where Bridges is not like an effective player in the playoffs. I mean, do you think that Do you think the Sixers can give them problems?
No, not really. I
None? Not at
think.
all. I think Joel Embiid can eat them alive a little bit, because now they
Yeah,
have.
but New
And the
York
reason
is.
why, and the reason why I say this, because I know Embiid's had some scenarios where he hasn't performed well in big games for Philly. Now they have the guards to get the guys away from him, and so now he can go one-on-one with some of these bigs at the elbow. But now, if you're the Knicks, you could put two of those guys out there. You could even put out Ariel Hawk-Porty if you want to, if you're desperate enough. I mean, I don't think they're that desperate. I don't think they're gonna throw it in who's the other big that they like to play? Diawara. I mean, they could try to have him out there just to be a 3-point shooter, just to get him out the paint.
And that's what Embiid likes being as a 3-point shooter. So, what is your prediction in this one, sir?
For this one, it's tough because I can see a scenario where it goes 7. I'll say the Knicks and the Sixers go 7, but New York wins. I just think it's going to be tight. I think the Sixers having a stare down death and then coming back from it against Boston was helpful, was very big. And it's
Okay.
something that's very hard, it's hard to shake a team like that because once they're in elimination mode, they're basically just playing the same way that they did to, make the 3-1 comeback the round before. They're going to be hard to kill.
All right. In our final matchup, we have Detroit, who I don't even know why they let Orlando even to go from a team who was ready to fire their coach. People, they didn't seem bought into anything, and then somehow took Detroit to 7. And then we have Cleveland, who only the home team could win. Like Toronto was feisty, yes, but
Mm-hmm.
Cleveland in the end moves on. So
Barnes, I mean, I know this ain't the Toronto Raptors, but Barnes looked incredible. If you don't think he's their best player when you come away from that series, you're out of your mind. That's all I'm gonna say. That's like super max potential play that he did. Detroit got punked in the first game. They got punked in the first game. They just physically got beat to the ball constantly by Orlando, and Paulo played well for the most part. He did. The problem with Paulo was that he would settle into the same routine that would screw the Magic throughout that series. The moment they started settling for the jump shots, because they were not a good jump shooting team, but they would fall into this trap because they would shoot the ball well for one quarter and they'd be like, oh, okay, we got it this time. And then they would just clank so many jumpers, Desmond Bane included, where it's like, that is not your strength. Your strength is going to the paint, getting offensive rebounds, pushing people around, and Paolo Banchero getting that freaking free throw line. That's the strength of the team. And they were able to do it sometimes. The game 6 is one of the most, I'll say this, I've never seen it before. And when I say that, yeah, we've seen choke jobs in game 6s where a team was up 3-1 or 3-2 and they blew it. What I mean is I have never seen a team shoot 60% from the field in the first half and 10% from the field in the second half. That is bipolar. I have never seen anything like it. And I don't know if we ever will. You have to have literally everything go wrong at once, but you got to give credit to Detroit as a part of that too. Their defense really ramped up in the last 3 games. And I think that was one of the reasons why they made the comeback. They survived it. Duren did not play well at all. Tobias Harris played well. And I want to see, do you think he can continue that against Cleveland in the next round? Do you think that Tobias can kind of step up his game again?
the thing is, do you think Detroit will their match with Cleveland, who is more seasoned and poised for
And
this,
then they like to
whereas
play 2 bigs as well. They now Jared Allen and Evan Mobley been criticized too. They had some disappearing acts in the Raptor series too. So, and also Detroit being the 1 seed, they have the home court. So you wonder if Mobley, who has had some great games in this playoff run, I just wonder if Allen and Mobley are going to be able to be super duper efficient against Tobias and Duren. Duren needs to show up. I think if they get the same performance out of Duren that they got in the Magic series, they're not going to win the series. He has to play better. They need better play out of Paul Reed. I wonder if we're gonna see more Dennis Jenkins because Cleveland loves to play those guards. In fact, one of the games where they were kind of desperate and looked like they were in trouble against Toronto, the reason they won the game is because they threw in Dennis Schroeder as a third guard, and he basically like opened up the offense and helped Evan Mobley get open for threes, and that's what got him back into that game. Harden's great, but we all know the story about James Harden in the playoffs, especially when you get in the later rounds. He falls apart, and he's older, and he can't rescue you. And Donovan Mitchell, I feel like, is a better version of James Harden. He just disappears in playoff games. It's
So
it's
it
an
sounds
interesting
like you have
matchup.
both teams who both want to lose this. So somebody has to win.
Well,
Who do
they're
you?
both really good. Like Detroit's got clearly has a better defense. If Cleveland had just a good defense, they would have beaten the Raptors in 5 games. But their offense is incredible. The Detroit offense is weird because they don't shoot the 3 ball well, but then the games where they won is because Kate Cunningham rescued them, making a bunch of threes. So you wonder if they're going to be able to do that. So it's basically like offense versus defense. I hate to put the Detroit fans in the in the torture chamber here, but I think they're gonna go 7 again. And I think Detroit's gonna win because they're gonna be at home. Because Cleveland just can't win on the road. That's one of their biggest problems. Like, can they even steal one on the road to try to make this competitive?
No, I abandoned Orlando after my regular season of they have to do it. So I'm still going to ride the Cleveland bandwagon and be like, I think
I'll
they
say
can
this
do
about
it.
Orlando just to finish that point off. I would be stunned if Jamal Mosley kept his job this week. That's all I'm gonna say. Like, I would not be shocked at all if we get together again in a week and he's fired. That's all I'm gonna say. I think they're a step away from being something really, really good, but they need an offensively minded guy that can push him forward. And I think that game 6 was the red letter example of like, you see, we don't have an offense. Our coach did not give us an offense. Like, if we had an offense, we would have beaten the 1-seeded Pistons and we'd be playing Cleveland, but that's not what's going on.
Ooh, a cliffhanger. I like it. Well,
Yeah.
anywho, that brings an end to this episode. So for Andrew Riche, I am Adam Murray. Have a good one.
Enjoy.